U.S. deployment of B-2 bombers to Diego Garcia suggests that Washington may be preparing for large-scale attacks against the armed group. But is this a wise strategic move or just an unnecessary escalation? In this article, we will analyze in more detail the U.S. moves, Iran's role, and the international community's response. The Houthi group, also known as the Ansar Allah movement, is an armed force that emerged from Yemen and has received strong support from Iran. Since the outbreak of Yemen's civil war in 2014, the Houthis have controlled much of the north of the country and launched numerous attacks on Saudi Arabia, Israel, and key shipping routes. The U.S. has long considered the Houthis a threat to regional security and has repeatedly carried out airstrikes against them. However, the deployment of B-2 bombers, one of the U.S.'s most important strategic assets, to Diego Garcia suggests that Washington is considering a large-scale military operation against the Houthis. Diego Garcia is a key U.S. military base in the Indian Ocean, out of range of Iranian or Houthi missiles. This means that if the U.S. launches an attack from this base, they can carry out precision airstrikes without fear of direct counterattack. The B-2 Spirit bomber is one of the most advanced long-range strike weapons, capable of stealth and carrying nuclear weapons. The B-2 deployment is not only aimed at the Houthis, but also sends a strong message to Iran that the U.S. is ready to respond strongly if Tehran continues to support its proxy forces. President Trump has a history of confronting Iran and Iran-backed militias. During his tenure, he withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal JCPOA and launched a maximum pressure campaign against Tehran. The B-2 deployment to Diego Garcia could be part of Trump's strategy to deter Iran and its allies, while also demonstrating U.S. military strength in the context of the upcoming election. However, the question is whether the U.S. is really ready for a major conflict. An attack on the Houthis could lead to retaliation from Iran and plunge the region into a new cycle of violence. Furthermore, the scandal involving a Trump administration official accidentally sending information about a plan to attack Yemen to a journalist shows the instability in how Washington is handling the situation. The international community has had mixed reactions to the U.S.'s moves. While Israel and some Gulf states support the military campaign against the Houthis, many European countries and the United Nations have expressed concern about the risk of escalating the conflict. Russia and China have also condemned the U.S. military deployment in the Middle East, saying it could lead to a regional war. Iran, as expected, has threatened to retaliate if the U.S. attacks its allies in Yemen. The U.S. deployment of B-2s to Diego Garcia is a notable move, but is it a sign of an impending war or just a way to put pressure on Iran and the Houthis? In the current political and military climate, it seems that Washington is adopting a carrot-and-stick tactic, both threatening military action and leaving the door open for negotiations. However, if an attack does take place, it could have unpredictable consequences for the entire Middle East region and could drag the U.S. into another war it cannot control. Therefore, the wisest approach at this time is probably not to unleash hell on the Houthis, but to seek a more sustainable diplomatic solution. The war is still ongoing, and there are people taking action. Among them is Ben Stiller. Ben Stiller, from Hollywood star to humanitarian activist. Perspectives on the Yemen conflict. Although Ben Stiller has never spoken directly about the conflict with the Houthi forces in Yemen, his humanitarian journey has demonstrated a strong commitment to global issues, especially the refugee crisis. In addition to being a talented comedian and filmmaker, Stiller is also one of the most active celebrities in raising awareness about the plight of those affected by war and violence. Ben Stiller, a dedicated goodwill ambassador since 2016, Stiller has worked closely with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees (UNHCR) to support those displaced by conflict. In 2018, he was officially appointed as a UNHCR Goodwill Ambassador, a role that is not only symbolic, but also requires deep engagement in global humanitarian issues. During his journey, Stiller has traveled to many areas affected by war and violence, including Jordan, Lebanon, Guatemala, and Germany, to meet, listen to, and support refugees. His presence has not only brought hope to those suffering, but also helped call for the international community to pay more attention to humanitarian tragedies. In 2019, Stiller appeared before the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee to testify on the Syrian refugee crisis. In his speech, he stressed, "We cannot let Syrian families suffer anymore, and we cannot let their children become a lost generation." While he did not directly mention Yemen, this sentiment can easily be applied to the current context. Yemen is facing one of the world's most serious humanitarian crises, with millions affected by famine, disease, and violence. Based on Stiller's actions, it is likely that if he were to speak out on Yemen, his stance would be more in favor of finding a humanitarian solution rather than escalating the conflict. As a refugee activist, he would likely call for all sides to reduce violence and focus on humanitarian assistance, as he has done in Syria before. The conflict in Yemen is not just a geopolitical issue, but also a long-term humanitarian tragedy. The Iran-backed Houthis have been fighting the Yemeni government and its allies, including Saudi Arabia and the United States, for years. Millions of innocent people have been caught in the crossfire, facing famine and extremely harsh living conditions. As the U.S. ramps up its military presence in the region, including the deployment of B-2 bombers, the question remains, will a military solution actually help, or will it only make the crisis worse? If Stiller were to speak out on Yemen, he would certainly call for a diplomatic solution rather than a military escalation. Given his record in Syria and other war-torn regions, he could use his voice to push the international community to pay more attention to the humanitarian issues in Yemen, something the world seems to be ignoring. Despite being a famous actor, Ben Stiller has proven that fame can be used as a tool to create positive change. If more Hollywood stars did the same, perhaps the world would look at wars not just from a political perspective, but also from a human and compassionate perspective. Although Ben Stiller has not spoken out about Yemen, given his humanitarian work, it is safe to assume that if he were to join the debate, his views would be more in favor of protecting civilians, increasing humanitarian aid, and finding a peaceful solution rather than further escalating the conflict. As war continues to ravage Yemen, the world needs more voices like Stiller's, not to add fuel to the fire, but to give hope to those who are suffering from war every day. What do you think about Donald Trump's war and Ben Stiller's dedication? Leave your comments below. We hope you find this video helpful. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you like it. Thanks for watching this video, and see you in the next videos. Bye.